Daf Yomi, Tractate, Zevachim, page 68, Daf Samach Ches, and we're starting on the bottom of, we're in the middle of a Mishnah. Let's see here. The bottom of 67b, and it was quoting a Mishnah, I think. Tashema, yeah, it was quoting a Mishnah from Kinim. Okay. Okay, I won't start from the whole thing, but just to start on the bottom here. Kava Nidra, the Mishnah continues, if besides forgetting which species of bird she specified to bring from her vow, the woman also can committed to sacrificing the birds of her vow together with the burnt offering of the obligatory pair, but the priest mistakenly sacrificed 2 birds above the red line and 2 below. Okay. Top of 68a now. This is our daf of the day. She must bring another 5 birds and sacrifice them all above the red line as burnt offerings. Since her commitment was not satisfied, she has not fulfilled even part of her vow. She must therefore bring 2 burnt offerings of each species to ensure that she fulfills her vow. And she must bring another bird to replace the initial obligatory burnt offering and fulfill her commitment to bring them together. This is the halacha. Only if both pairs that she brought were of the same species, but if they were of 2 different species, and the priest does not remember which he sacrificed first as the obligatory pair, she must bring 6, 2 of each species, to ensure that she fulfills her vow, and 1 more of each species to ensure that she properly replaces the original burnt offering of the obligatory pair and fulfills her commitment. Nisanasan lakohen. ואין הוא יודעת מה נתנה הלך הכהן יעשה, ואין הוא יודע מה עשה, צריכה 4 פרידין לנדרה, ו2 לחובתה, ואחת הסחס. If the woman specified the species of bird for her vow, but then forgot which species she specified, and she gave 2 pairs of birds to the priest, but does not know what species she gave, or even if she gave him 1 or 2 species of birds. And the priest went and sacrificed the birds, but does not know now what he sacrificed, where, in this case, she must bring 7 birds, as follows: 4 birds, 2 of each species, for her vow, and 2 more birds, 1 of each species, for her obligatory burnt offering, in case the priest sacrificed a sin offering of a certain species, and the burnt offering must now match that species, and 1 sin offering of either species, in case the priest sacrificed them all as burnt offerings. Ben Azai Omer Shnei Chatois. Ben Azai says she must bring 2 sin offerings, 1 of each species, as he holds that if the priest sacrificed a bird of a certain species, specifically as the obligatory burnt offering, the sin offering must now match that species. Amar Yehoshua zehu she'amru keshu chai kolo echad ukeshu met kolo shiva. The Mishnah concludes, or Yehoshua said, that there is a parable that explains the situation. This is what people say about a sheep. When it is alive, it makes one sound, and when it is dead, it makes 7 sounds. Its 2 horns become trumpets, its 2 shin bones become flutes, its skin becomes a drumhead, its large intestines become harp strings, and its small intestines become lyre strings. Here too, because of the uncertainty as to what occurs, the woman must bring 7 extra birds. Since Rabbi Yehoshua summarizes the Mishnayot in this chapter must be in accordance with his opinion. According to Rav Ahada bar Ahava, his explanation of Yeshua's principle, burnt offerings of birds, sacrifices, sin offerings, become valid sin offerings. Why then, according to these Mishnayot, are they disqualified? Ema, Rabbi Yehoshua le'apoke midei mi'ilo, le'misak le'nachova mi'amal. The Gemara responds, Rav Ahada bar Ahava's explanation is not at odds with these Mishnayot. While it is reasonable to say, meaning to explain, that Rabbi Yehoshua said that the offering becomes a sin offering, insofar as to exclude one who derives benefit from it from liability, from its use of consecrated property. Did he say that it becomes a sin offering so expansive as to indicate that it would satisfy the owner's obligation in the cases in the Mishnayot in Kenim, all burnt offerings that were sacrificed as sin offerings are not subject to the halachot of misuse of consecrated property, but the woman must nevertheless bring replacement offerings. Okay, new Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Kol apsulin shimanaku. You know what I think? I'm just feeling lucky right now. We're going to go through it all the way. Just do bevas achas, one shot. We're going to finish. Usually we do 2 dafim, 2 amudim, but the Mishnah will continue on to 68b, and just continue, take this out. 68, finish it up. Kol apsulin, Mishnah, new Mishnah. Kol apsulin shimanaku malikasim psulam. Ve'ena b'tamas b'esam liyo malak usmoel v'laylo. The Mishnah says, with regard to any of those people disqualified from performing the temple service who pinched the nape of a bird offering, their pinching is not valid. But the offering's meat does not render one who swallows it ritually impure when it is in the throat, as would the meat of a kosher bird that was not ritually slaughtered if a priest pinched it with the thumbnail of his left hand, or if he pinched it at night, or if he slaughtered a non-sacred bird inside the temple courtyard, or a sacrificial bird outside the temple courtyard. In all these cases, although it is prohibited to consume these birds, they do not render one ritually impure when they are in the throat, as the halachic status of pinching is like that of slaughtering. Malak b'sakin, malak if he pinched with a knife and not with his thumbnail, or if he pinched a non-sacred bird inside the temple courtyard, or a sacrificial bird outside the temple courtyard. Continuing on now to 68b. Toirin shlo yigiv zmanon, uvnei yoida shevar zmanon shel shekapo. Or if he pinched doves whose time of fitness for sacrifice has not yet arrived, as they are too young to be sacrificed, or if he pinched pigeons whose time of fitness has passed, as they are too old, or if he pinched the nape of a fledgling whose wing was withered, or whose eye was blinded, or whose leg was severed. In all these cases, although the bird's nape was pinched, it renders one who swallows it ritually impure when it is in the throat. Nice. Zehaklal, kol shebasur kodesh, enu mitam besav lio. Lo yebasur kodesh mitam besav lio. This is the principle. The meat of any bird that was initially fit for sacrifice, whose disqualification occurred in the course of the service in the sacred temple courtyard does not render one who swallows it ritually impure when it is in the throat. The meat of any bird whose disqualification did not occur in the sacred area, but rather was disqualified before the service began, renders one ritually impure when it is in the throat. That's the Mishnah. We now start the Gemara. Amar Rav, Smoin v'layno. Rav says, pinching with the thumbnail of the left hand and pinching at night do not cause the offspring's meat to render one who swallows it ritually impure when it is in the throat, as would the carcass of an unslaughtered bird. But pinching by a non-priest, and pinching meaning cutting from the nape of the neck with a knife rather than with a fingernail, do cause the meat to render one ritually impure when it is in the throat. My shnas moy dislech shero veyoy makipurim b'laylo yislech shero vevoy dorim zonami yislech shero b'shchito shchita lav avodahi. The Gemara challenges what is different about the first two cases that prevents the bird from assuming the status of a carcass. Temple service with the left hand has an instance of validity during the service on Yom Kippur, when the high priest enters the Holy of Holies holding the spoon of incense with his left hand. And temple service at night has an instance of validity in the burning of limbs and fats of offerings on the altar, which may be burned throughout the night, but a non-priest also has an instance of validity in the slaughter of animal offerings. Why then does Rav rule that pinching by a non-priest renders the bird a carcass? The Gemara answers, slaughter is not considered a full-fledged sacrificial rite, and therefore it cannot be compared to pinching. V'lo, and the Gemara asks, is it not a full-fledged rite? V'amar, Rabbi Zera, shchitas paravizah psula, u'mechavirav ala alazor b'chuka. Is it not a full-fledged rite? But doesn't Rabbi Zera say that the slaughter of a red heifer by a non-priest is not valid, which indicates that it is a full-fledged rite? And Rav showed a source in the Torah for this halacha. The verses concerning the red heifer mention both Elazar the priest as performing the slaughter and the word statute, which is mentioned in the verse, this is the statute of the law, Numbers 19, verse 2, teaching that Elazar's involvement was lawfully required. Shani Paul, the Gemara answers the red heifer is different, as it has the halachic status of an item consecrated for temple maintenance rather than for sacrifice on the altar, and therefore its slaughter cannot teach the halacha concerning an actual offering. The Gemara asks, but can it not be inferred a fortiori that slaughter is a sacrificial rite if animals that have the status of items consecrated for temple maintenance, which are of lesser sanctity, require slaughter by the priesthood? Is it necessary to say that the slaughter of animals consecrated for sacrifice on the altar, which are of greater sanctity, is a sacrificial rite that should require a priest? Apparently, the fact that non-priests may slaughter offerings proves that certain sacrificial rites apply to them. Amar Rav Shisha bar Davidi, mi didhav maros negoyim delav voidehi uvayekehuna. Rav Shisha, son of Rav Edi, said, the slaughter of a red heifer does not constitute temple service at all, and therefore it cannot be compared to the slaughter of an offering. The halacha is just as it is with regard to examination of the shades of leprous marks, which does not constitute temple service but requires a declaration of purity or impurity by the priesthood. The Gemara asks, but let us derive from the halacha of a private altar, which was a valid medium for sacrificing offerings before the temple was built, where non-priests were permitted to pinch the napes of bird offerings, that there is a circumstance in which pinching by non-priests is valid. Why then does the bird assume the status of a carcass when the pinching is performed by a non-priest? Mi bama lo yalif. The Gemara answers, one cannot derive the halachot of temple service from the halachot of a private altar, which was considered non-sacred by comparison. The Gemara asks, and can one not derive the halachot, the temple service, from the halacha of a private altar? But isn't it taught in the Braita? From where is it derived with regard to an item? For example, the limbs of an offering which emerged from the temple courtyard and was thereby rendered unfit for sacrifice upon the altar, that if it nevertheless ascended upon the altar, it shall not descend. It is derived from the fact that an item that emerged as valid for sacrifice on a private altar. This indicates that one can learn from the halachot of a private altar with regard to the temple service. Tana, the Gemara answers, the Tana of that Braita relies on the verse, this is the law of the burnt offering, Ha'olah, Leviticus 6, verse 2, from which it is derived that any item that ascends upon the altar shall not descend from it, even if it was disqualified. In other words, the verse is the actual source for the halakha of the Braita, whereas the case of a private altar is cited merely in support of this ruling. Until this point, the Gemara had discussed the opinion of Rav, who holds that the pinching of a non-priest renders the bird a carcass with regard to ritual impurity. But Rabbi Yochanan says if a non-priest pinched the nape of a bird offering, the meat does not render one who swallows it ritually impure when it is in the throat. But if a priest pinched it, meaning cut it from the nape of the neck with a knife, the meat renders one ritually impure when it is in the throat. Tanan, kol psula jimal kum ligazim psula. Vishlam Yochanan kol nasui zal el Rav kol nasui mai. The Gemara brings a proof for the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan from that which we learned in the Mishnah. If any of those disqualified for temple service pinch the nape of a bird offering, their pinching is not valid, but the meat does not render one who swallows it ritually impure when it is in the throat. Granted, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the word any is written to add that even the pinching of a non-priest does not render the bird a carcass. But according to Rav, who holds that it does render the bird a carcass, what is added by the word any? Lav. The Gemara answers, it is written to add pinching with the left hand or pinching at night. The Gemara challenges the word any is unnecessary with regard to teaching the cases of pinching with the left hand and pinching at night, as they are taught in the Mishnah explicitly. The Gemara answers, according to Rav, the word any is not meant to add a specific case. Rather, the Mishnah teaches the principle and then explains using specific examples. Tashima, the Gemara suggests, come and hear a proof from the continuation of the Mishnah. Zehakal, kol sheb sulam koyishvin v'tamim begodim abei sablio v'ishton yochen kol lesayzol l'rav l'zayimai. This is the principle. The meat of any bird whose disqualification occurred during the course of the service in the sacred temple courtyard does not render the garments of one who swallows it ritually impure when the meat is in the throat. Granted, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the word any is written to add that even the pinching of a non-priest does not render the bird a carcass. But according to Rav, who holds that it does render the bird a carcass, what is added by the word any